Hey everyone, I'm Ruby and welcome back to Pierced Owl. If you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so that you never ever miss a new video or an update from us. Today we're going to be discussing Jestrum Piercings, also known as vertical philtrum piercings. This is a super cool piercing that you really don't see that often, but has grown in popularity online in the past year or so. This video will be covering everything you need to know about this piercing, from anatomy and aftercare to all of the jewelry options that you have once this piercing is healed. So let's get into it. So you may be looking at me and you're like, what does this girl know about Jestrum piercing? Well, I had one for about a year and I retired it actually last January, so literally a year ago. It was something I hadn't really seen except for like a few posts on Pinterest that I had pinned because I thought they were really cute, or occasionally on Instagram I would see someone with a Jestrum piercing and I always thought they looked really amazing on that person, but I never really felt like it would look that good on me. I had taken out my labret piercing, which I have again, but I had taken out my labret piercing about 6 months before I had gotten my Jestrum piercing, and I was really upset about taking my labret piercing out, and I felt like my septum piercing at the time and my eyebrow piercing weren't doing it for me. I needed something more boom, if you know what I mean. So I knew that I didn't want to get a Medusa or another labret. So I was contemplating a vertical labret and a vertical philtrum at this time. I ultimately chose a vertical philtrum, aka Jestrum piercing. The year that I had this piercing, I really loved it. I thought it was like a great conversation piece when it came to piercings, and I really loved the symmetry of it. I love how it accentuated my top lip. Overall, I thought it was really cute. And even though I did retire and I no longer have this piercing, I do look back fondly on that piercing. And when I see videos and pictures of me at the time of that piercing, I'm like, oh, that was so cute. I should have appreciated it at the time, but can't do anything about it now. So let's just talk about Jestrum piercings and everything you need to know about it. Let's get into it. So first things first, what is a Jestrum piercing? Jestrum piercing, vertical philtrum, I'm going to be using them interchangeably throughout this video. Basically, the top lip version of a vertical labret. It's a similar placement to a Medusa or a regular philtrum piercing. So it goes right above the Cupid's bow and between your nose. So there's a lot of space right here, depending on your anatomy, that you can get that piercing. Instead of a regular philtrum piercing that exits through the backside of your lip, so into your mouth and gums, the vertical philtrum piercing exits through the bottom of your lips. It goes from up here and exits down here. Where a traditional philtrum piercing is pierced with a labret, a vertical philtrum is pierced with a curved barbell, like an eyebrow piercing. Because of the exit point being outside of the mouth, vertical philtrums are way less likely to cause tooth and gum damage, unlike a traditional philtrum piercing. Like a lot of piercings, vertical philtrums are anatomy dependent. When you book this piercing and or consult this piercing, typically your piercer is going to check out the area to make sure you have enough flesh that piercing will be stable and not reject or migrate. Similar to an eyebrow or a belly ring, this is technically a surface piercing. So without enough tissue, it has a higher chance of migrating or rejecting. So your piercer will just want to make sure that there's like enough flesh so that piercing is stable. In my experience, I was pierced with a 14 gauge for this piercing. I can't say whether or not this is the norm. I know that some people are pierced with a 16 gauge, but my piercer felt comfortable piercing me with a 14 gauge just because larger gauges are typically more stable. The things I was worried about when I was told that it was going to be a 14 gauge is, oh my god, scarring. Oh my god, that's going to be such a bigger hole than a 16 gauge. But ultimately, it was kind of indistinguishable when I took that piercing out. I think a 16 and a 14 gauge would have looked the same as far as scarring on my lip. So let's discuss pain. All piercings hurt to some degree. It's literally a needle going through your body. And lips are a really tender area. Typically, it will hurt a little bit more than, say, an eyebrow piercing. There's just a lot of nerve endings in this area. It's super sensitive. For me personally, and I'm only speaking on behalf of my experience, I didn't find this piercing excruciating. Yes, it hurt for the second that it took for her to go through my lip. I know people have different experiences. I was looking up other people's experiences and what they shared about getting this piercing. Some people said it was really excruciating. However, I think with any piercing, even if it's one that's known to hurt a little bit more than, say, an eyebrow piercing or something that's not as sensitive, that it does only last a second. I think we can all do really hard things for just 1 second. So that's something to keep in mind when and if you are planning to get this piercing. Okay, so now that we've discussed pain, anatomy, let's go over aftercare. As I said before, this piercing is fit with a curved barbell. And when you are initially pierced, that bar that they're going to put in is going to be extra long to accommodate for swelling. All lip piercings are should be fit with a longer bar because it's a sensitive area. It really does swell a lot. However, that long bar is temporary. Your piercer will provide you with a timeline for when you should come back and get that piercing downsized. I think for me, it was probably about 4 weeks that I went back in to get my bar downsized. And if you go without getting that jewelry downsized, similar to an ear that needs to be downsized, you're going to find that extra long bar is really a nuisance. It gets in the way and it can wind up irritating that piercing and have a negative effect if you go too long without getting downsized. So listen to your piercer when they give you a timeline to be downsized, because in the long run, it will be the best decision you can make for the health and well-being of that piercing. So as I said before, this is a sensitive area and will swell substantially after getting it pierced. And if you do get this piercing, and it kind of goes for any new piercing, if you notice that the swelling exceeds the length of the bar, and it almost looks like the jewelry is being like engulfed or swallowed up by the swelling skin around it, return to your piercer ASAP, because that can be an easy remedy for them to solve. They just have to switch it in for a larger bar that can accommodate all that swelling. So just monitor your piercing, make sure the swelling doesn't exceed the length of your jewelry. In addition to monitoring your piercing and downsizing it when appropriate, there's also additional steps for aftercare that will need to be taken. Lip and oral piercings are known to have a higher level of aftercare as opposed to a septum piercing. In addition to keeping the area clean with saline sprays, also need to avoid lip products, spicy foods, even toothpaste and mouthwash that can irritate that piercing while it's vulnerable and new and healing. So even though this piercing, the vertical philtrum or Jestrum piercing, doesn't technically exit through your mouth, it's still important to avoid harsh products like whitening toothpaste or mouthwash with alcohol in it, because it can still irritate the piercing just by, you brush your teeth, you could get some toothpaste on your lip, or you swish around some mouthwash, it gets on your lip. While your piercing is healing, just avoid those harsh products around your mouth. Same with chapstick. This was a hard thing that I had to go through when my piercer told me, you need to avoid chapstick and lip products while your piercing heals. I love a lip liner. I love a lip gloss. I was like, you've got to be joking. I can't use lip products. Yeah, it's true. Don't use lip products. If you really need chapstick, I got mine done in, I think it was the winter. So you need some chapstick. I was told that if I really needed it, to put it on the outside of my lips and just avoid where that piercing hole is. Having gotten my vertical philtrum done and having a labret piercing done, surprisingly, the healing seemed very different for me. I really struggled when I got a labret piercing. One, because it's in your mouth, so you feel it on your teeth. It's just a new sensation to deal with. And especially with that extra long bar that's put in initially, there were some times where I was chewing and I accidentally chomped on that piercing, kind of just forgetting I had it. You're eating, you're not always conscious of that piercing. That was something with my Jestrum piercing never ever happened, because it doesn't go in my mouth at all. As far as eating goes, chewing, it really didn't affect that nearly as much as a labret piercing did. So that was one positive thing about the aftercare. Honestly, between the two of them, I felt like my Jestrum piercing was way easier to heal because I just didn't have to deal with that sensation of it being in my mouth. So now that we've discussed aftercare, let's go into jewelry options. Obviously, once your piercing is totally healed, you have the option to change your jewelry. As I said before, and like this is the third time I'm saying it, it's a curved barbell. So when you're shopping, seek out curved barbells that are the correct gauge for your piercing. Standard gauge size can vary between this piercing, so just familiarize yourself with what your gauge piercing is, and this goes for all piercings. Familiarize yourself with your gauge piercing, so shopping for a piece is way easier for you and you're not left with a piece of jewelry that doesn't fit you. With vertical philtrums, you have a lot of styling options. You can have, you know, kind of a traditional curved barbell with balls on either side. Also really common to have a disc on the bottom so you don't have like a big ball right on your lip. People wear flat discs, which are really cute, and they kind of almost make that piercing look like a traditional philtrum piercing by having that disc on there. Another great thing about this is, unlike a labret or a Medusa piercing, the jewelry doesn't twist. So here, when I talk, when I move my mouth, that jewelry can twist and turn with all the saliva that's in my mouth. It just moves around. But with a curved barbell, it stays in place. So you can have a really cute gem on the top and you don't have to worry about it like flipping upside down throughout the day. It just stays there and it will stay perfectly straight, not turn around, and that's a really great quality about Jestrum piercings. Just be wary that a chunkier piece on the bottom is more prone to collecting food or anything else that goes on your mouth. There were some times where I typically wore a ball on my bottom lip and I would have food and forget to check, and I would look in the mirror later and see that there were like crumbs on it. So a bigger piece is on the bottom is more prone to collecting those kind of things. So just keep that in mind. At this point, I think we have covered hopefully nearly everything you need to know about Jestrum piercings, but I wanted to add a few extra points that I think are relevant to a discussion about Jestrum piercings. With all lip piercings, I think, but particularly vertical labrets and vertical philtrums, because it is right on the lip, there are a lot of questions like, how does this affect kissing? Can you kiss when you have this piercing? If I recall correctly, my piercer advised me to avoid kissing or anything intimate with the lips while this piercing is healing. And there's like several steps of healing. I interpreted that as don't kiss for like the next week. Is that what she meant? I don't know, but that's how I interpreted her advisory. I think it would be a little unrealistic to think, oh, no one's going to kiss someone while this piercing completely heals. Beyond when you can or can't kiss, beyond all of that, what is it like to kiss with a vertical philtrum? I thought it was going to be really, really strange for me as well as whoever I was kissing. I didn't really notice it at all, and I didn't get any bad reviews. I don't think it is really a problem. It's basically what I'm saying. It looks like it would cause a problem. Realistically, you feel that it's there. Of course, you can feel that it's there, but does it impede on the quality of kissing? No. That's the answer to that question. Another thing, and I should have mentioned this during aftercare, but something that I noticed, and I believe a few other people had mentioned online, drinking out of cans. So specifically, like, I'm talking like an aluminum Diet Coke can. And particularly if you have a bigger piece on the bottom, that piece can get stuck on the can. So that's just something to be mindful of. Maybe avoid cans. Just use a straw. Whether it was healing or not healed, that was something that just to be mindful of when you're drinking from a can, or just avoid them altogether because it can snag your piercing. One more thing, and I didn't consider this when I had a Jestrum piercing, but I quickly discovered rubbing your lips together is challenging and you have something right on the bottom. Again, I never wore a disc, so this may be different if you do have a disc on the bottom portion, but going like, you can't really do it anymore. Not that you're rubbing your lips that often, but when your piercing heals and you do go back to wearing chapstick or something like that, It's just not something you can do. And I will say, when I took that Jestrum piercing out and I was able to rub and smack my lips together for the first time in a year, it was a really, really satisfying feeling, and I forgot how much I missed it. Those are just some extra things that I wanted to throw in there because they are questions that come up when you're talking about Jestrum piercing. So now they're answered. Right, I think that is everything to know about Jestrum piercings. However, if I left something out, please comment it down below, or if you have a Jestrum piercing, share your experiences down below. We would all love to hear them. And if you aren't subscribed to Pierce Owl, hit the button below so that you never ever miss a new video from us. We put out videos nearly every week about all things piercings and jewelry. If you want more content from us, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Pierced Owl. And if you're looking for some new body jewelry, earrings, septum rings, lip rings, nipple rings, you can find all of those on pierceowl.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.